Welcome back to the Anti-Meta Meta Club. This week's Race C is actually the very first time we've had this combo for Race C, and it's a wild one. Let's get into it. The anti-meta car for this week is the M6, and I know a lot of you are going to suggest the M6 is just as much of a meta as the BRZ, but I think it's actually just a very close second place. When it comes to raw pace over the course of a lap, as well as seemingly in the time trial, the BRZ really is untouchable, but the M6 is very close. The closest thing to the M6 then is the GTR, but when it comes to the race itself, the tires get shredded so much that it really is not competition for the M6 or the BRZ. In this case, it's almost one of the situations where if you can't beat them, you gotta join them, but luckily it is a second car and it is not the all too powerful BRZ. I managed to sneak in just barely into the 111s, but as you can see, much better is clearly possible. Besides the BRZ and the M6, there are only 3 other cars that are even in the top 100, the GTR, the AMG 2020, and the Lexus RCF. 68 of the 100 top 100 spots are the BRZ. The very first breaking point can be seen as far back as the 100 meter board, but it's right before the 50. If you see this bump in the pavement right before the 50 meter board, that is when I want you to hit the brakes. Immediately start to trail brake in, get down to 3rd gear, then back up to 4th before getting on the throttle. When you apex, you should see these trees in the distance. Continue to steer into the corner as you gently get on the throttle, making sure that you don't jump on the throttle too quickly and induce any understeer, and you should make it without going in the dirt. On the left side of the track, there's a really wiggly part of the white line, and it's kind of across from this distinct bush that's here on the right. However, that's pretty hard to see at full speed. You can definitely try to pinpoint it when you're doing your time trial lap, but when it comes to the race or when it comes to doing consecutive laps, I think what's going to happen is you're going to instinctively figure out exactly when to turn in. And that's something that's going to happen in a lot of tracks that don't have really distinct brake or turn-in markers. Do feel free to look for that little squiggly line, but don't be surprised if it's hard to see, and definitely do trust your instincts. Your instincts will serve you well because it's going to be able to pick up a lot of details that you won't consciously be able to pick up. As you turn in and approach the corner, the car is going to become less and less responsive, and as it stops turning in, you're going to lift off the throttle to make sure that it can tuck in even more. As your car moves away from the inside, you're then going to downshift to 3rd, try not to add any brakes, then upshift to 4th, and then steer in gently. Your car should start turning in even after you get on the throttle, and then you should see it start moving into the inside once again. You can see from my steering that I'm adding and subtracting steering over and over again because what I'm trying to do is find the grip. If I hear the tires squealing, I know I'm turning a little bit too much, so I can let off the steering, add a little bit more afterwards, and by doing that, you should make sure that you're not scrubbing the front tires. This green and white cylinder on the right is a really good reference point for your second apex. If you're apexing before that, chances are you're actually going to go off the track unless you're going really slow, so you want to apex just about at it or maybe a little bit before. Continue steering to the right and make sure you get yourself aligned with the right side of the track as early as you can. Right before this 50 board, and I realize it's probably a 50-foot board, not a meter board, but right before the 50 board, you're going to hit the brakes, downshift to 3rd, and start turning in before you get to the 20 board. Let the car decelerate before you then downshift to 2nd gear. If you do it too early, it's going to make the car slide out. You want to apex just before the end of the red and white curve there on the left. Get on the throttle, being careful not to slide out, and go straight towards the green building in the distance. Right at the beginning of the red and white curve here on the right, you're going to turn in, lift off, very gently add brakes, downshift to 1st, turn in even more off the brakes, let the car coast and rotate, then shift up to 3rd gear before then exiting very gently, trying to make sure that you don't steer too much so that you get really close to the dirt here and stay as far away from the dirt on the exit as you can. Actually, you shouldn't start as far away as you can. You should get really close to it, but you don't want to touch it at all. Don't touch that dirt. Once the car is fully stable, you're going to then turn in, aiming to hit the curb just as the front of your car passes the green and white cylinder here on the right. What I want you to do is gently come off the throttle so you can straighten your car up, and then you're going to hit the brakes at the end of the red and white curb here. Like I said, we're going to be straightened out and hitting the brakes right at the end of the curb right here. Immediately downshift to 2nd gear and start trail braking in. Your goal is to get off the brakes as soon as you possibly can and get all the way next to that curb. Up to 3rd gear, gently on the throttle, and make sure you can just stay on the track. But as long as you're on the track, even if you track all the way out to the right, that's totally fine. You want to keep up as much momentum as you can and get on the throttle as early as you can. As you can see, even if you're all the way to the right of the track, this next right-hand corner that goes over the crest isn't much of an issue, and the M6 can definitely handle that, even, like I said, if you're all the way to the right. Staying on the left side of the track, it's going to curve to the left and you're going to follow it, and as soon as it starts to straighten out, that's when you're going to start turning in to then hug the inside of the corner here on the right. This section isn't actually complicated at all, but I'm going to keep it in slow motion so you can know exactly when you should track out. If you look on the right, you can see another one of the white and green cylinders. After that are the number boards in the distance, and when you see that first number board, you're going to then start tracking out, aiming to get to the left side of the track at the 200 right here. Once again, at this little lump in the track before the 150, you're going to start turning in, and right before you get to the 150, you're going to then come entirely off the throttle. As you pass the 150, you're then going to add just a little bit of brakes. We're looking at maybe 35% brakes. You're going to then add steering after you come off and get on the throttle as early as you can while you still continue steering to the inside. You'll notice that I understeered there, and that's because I tried to add too much steering while I was still braking. You want to add steering as you come off the brakes, but if you do go off the track, like I did right there, keep on the throttle because it might not slow you down that much like it didn't slow me down here, and I was able to get the 111. This is a very unforgiving and surprisingly complex track, so give yourself a lot of patience as you learn this. You're going to find yourself driving off the track a lot, so just be patient, keep trying, you will eventually get it. This really long curving corner right here can really destroy the tires in the race, so it's important to pay attention to what sounds the tires are making. If you're not using a force feedback wheel, it's really difficult to determine exactly when you're scrubbing the tires, but the sounds can definitely help. Your car can get really loose right here, so be very careful as you get on the throttle. You can balance it with the throttle, but too much throttle will actually just make it slide. You don't have to go wide for that really tight right-hand corner. You really just need to keep up your momentum and try to get to the second apex as fast as you can. This left-hander can be really tricky because if you touch the curb at all, it'll probably make you drift, but there are some who can successfully go over it. I would suggest just not trying it whatsoever. Knowing exactly when to hug the inside right here, and then of course when to track out, is very important as well. For the final corner, not only is it safer, but it's also faster to turn in first and then add a little bit of brakes. This car can definitely handle it. I used to brake first and turn in, which caused me to understeer off the track a lot. I understeered there just because I wasn't patient enough while adding my steering. If you were more patient than I am, then you won't understeer and you'll probably go a lot faster than I did. It feels pretty bad to admit this, but I think I've actually almost been defeated with the anti-meta choice because, in my opinion, the car that we chose is almost a meta car. It is just so close to being as good as the BRZ that it really feels dirty using it as an anti-meta car, but the fact that absolutely nothing else really works race pace unless you have alien type skills means that it really is our only option. Before we go on, I want to give a shout out to whoever made this livery. If you search Samantha, you can find this livery. It is the official livery. It's not the official livery, but it is a recreation of the actual Samantha Tan livery that Sam and the team have been using. And I didn't actually even know it exists until a week or two ago, which is really funny because I'm the only Gran Turismo 7 driver who's on Samantha Tan Racing. So shout out to, I believe it's Driving Crooner who made this. It's a fantastic livery, very well done. Another massive shout out to the man starting behind me, Hogsden GT. I've been racing this man for years. He's a very fast, very clean driver, and I feel bad that I wasn't following him or subscribed to him on YouTube until tonight. He's fantastic. I've been racing against him for years, and he's a true gentleman, and he's a fantastic content creator. So please give him a sub. Follow that man. In real life. I'm kidding. Don't follow him in real life. We're going to talk about the race strategy in just a second, but before that, I do want to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of both the M6 as well as the BRZ, the two cars that you're going to see the most of in this race. The BRZ, the meta car, is incredible when it comes to cornering, and it's also got really good tire wear, but it is extremely difficult to drive, so you're probably going to see a lot of people spinning out, and if you use it, you're probably going to find yourself spinning out at least a little bit. The trade-off with the incredible tire wear and handling is the lack of acceleration and top speed. You really got to keep your momentum, which means that it's not going to be very easy to pass one of these in a corner, but if you can get in front of it, it's going to be very difficult for one of them to pass you. In a lot of circumstances, you're going to find that people in the BRZ are going to struggle to pass pretty much anything else that has any more power, unless it's one of the really weird old cars that doesn't work at all. But if you're in this, or if you're in the GTR, even if you aren't that fast around the track, your pace isn't that great in general, it's still going to be really difficult for someone in a BRZ to pass you. With all that said, it's also just incredibly difficult to drive the BRZ in general, so you're going to find a lot of people that are trying to use the car are probably going to struggle to actually make use of all of the virtues of the car. Now right here's a good example of someone who is pretty good with the car. I don't actually know this guy, but racing against him now, you can see that I was able to pass him on the inside. I was able to get all the way in front of him, but because I didn't park it on the apex, he was able to use the superior handling of the BRZ and get back in front of me before the end of the corner. Not only that, but he pulled right in front, and even though I was completely off the throttle, he had parked it so hard in the apex that I just could not avoid him. Now, I didn't mean to do that. I was trying to avoid him, but I was also worried about the people behind me, so I didn't want to jam on the brakes. He was just trying to make sure that he covered his spot, which of course is fine, but it comes with its own risks. Now, this, unfortunately, I did not mean to do. You can see from my inputs that I definitely didn't mean to turn into him. I was trying to turn out of the corner, but I caught a little bit of the dirt, slid into him, and I did hit him with enough force that it gave me damage, so I can only assume it gave him damage, and I'm really hoping, in hindsight, that might have been what caused him to crash here. I didn't even think about that initially, and I thought that he probably knew that I didn't mean to hit him like that, but in hindsight, it feels pretty bad. I hope the damage that he probably got from me sliding out and running into him didn't cause him to go off track. If it did, I'm sorry. You're a fantastic driver, and I do hope we race again, and if I pass you, I hope I do it very cleanly instead of sliding out and accidentally drifting my nose into you. The more I think about that, that actually feels pretty bad, and I've said this like 3 times now, but I really hope that the damage that he most likely got from that is not what caused him to drive off track. Anyways, back to the race itself. I told you we'd talk about the strategy, so we're going to talk about it right now. Initially, it seemed like this was going to be the kind of race where you just had to pit, but you didn't have to do anything with the tires. But it is actually much faster to take tires, especially if you're in anything except the BRZ. It's really important that you use the correct pit window. If you pit really early, assuming that you want to just get in the pits and treat it like a Joker lap, you're probably going to suffer from some severe tire wear and lack of pace towards the end of the race. So a lot of people are pitting between lap 7 and 9, but of course I think it is possible to pit as early as lap 6 or as late as lap 10. The real determining factor of how you do overall is how well you protect your tires. And one of the biggest things that you can do to protect your tires is make sure you're not steering too much. If you're on controller, it's going to be very, very difficult to manage that. And I know that a lot of even though the very good controller players do struggle with that a little bit, I think the very elite controller players are able to manage their tires like that. But I struggle with it, and I do have the wheel. I have the benefit of being able to feel it. We can all hear it when we're scrubbing the front tires, and I still struggle with taking the correct lines, entering the corners correctly. Essentially, the better that you do in general, the easier it's going to be on your tires. And that's not always the case, but if you just drive smoothly, that will help the tires. If you overheat the tires, then they start shredding, and that can happen very easily if you are steering too much, especially in that really long right-hander that is essentially turn 2. On top of what I mentioned, using too much braking while turning in or while trail braking can also cause the tires to wear unnaturally fast. And even though we have custom slipstream, which gives us more slip and gives us less dirty air, being in the dirty air of the other cars can also contribute to overheating the tires and shredding the tires. Now, as you see that person driving off, it is very easy to drive off there. So like I said in the lap breakdown, it's important to turn in first before then adding a little brake instead of trying to brake hard, because that part of the track isn't straight. When you hit the brakes, it's naturally going to make the car understeer just a little bit. It's going to be less responsive to turning in unless you balance it out perfectly. And most people who are trying to decelerate are not really thinking about all that. So if you're too close to the edge and you hit the brakes, you just might go off. Turn in first, then hit the brakes. There's actually a moment here later on in this race that it's going to be very important to note. We'll talk about it when we get there. Slightly less dangerous than braking heavily before turning in is turning in and apexing too early, because what happens if you apex too early in the final corner is that you then go off on the exit, which leads to the pits, and pitting at the wrong time, of course, can be disastrous. Hitting the pit wall is extra disastrous, but both are better than potentially just going off, getting stuck between the divot and the fence, and then potentially getting reset because you can't get out in time for the penalty to stop itself from kicking in. That's right, you can actually get kicked out of a race by getting stuck. Now, this person turned in really early, braked, understeered, and then got on the throttle anyway, and that sent him off just like I was talking about. Luckily, he's able to get back on and not go in the pits or hit the pit wall, but of course that cost him a position, and his tires are then going to be dirty for this next corner. So since this man was defending so aggressively all the way on the left side, I knew that he wasn't going to possibly be able to cover the inside, well, which turns into the outside. So I decided to go for it, push myself through, and he ran into me. Now, initially, I didn't think he did that on purpose, but just in case, I decided to hug the inside so he couldn't take the inside and potentially push me off. And of course, I was a little bit worried that he might have done it on purpose, so I decided to defend on the inside, and he did hit me. Not only that, he tried to get in front of me after hitting me. So again, I hugged the apex. He hit me again, and then hit the person behind me. I don't know if he was just panicking or if he was hoping that he could just physically block all of us, but because of all that, he lost a lot of positions. If you are going to inevitably lose a position, don't be desperate. Desperation causes incidents like that, and then you're just going to lose all your positions. Now, as I mentioned before, there is a pit window, and the optimal pit window is between 7 and 9, laps 7 and 9. I still get people talking about undercuts a lot in the streams that I do, and people just love an undercut. People love the idea that an undercut works as a strategic idea, a strategic concept. So a lot of people just always want to do an undercut, but the undercut is not the only option, and it doesn't always work. You can see that I am actually 2.6 seconds behind the next guy ahead. If I were to pit early and he were to pit the lap afterwards, I would not be close enough to get in front of him. So what would happen is I'd be slightly closer to him, but I'd have slightly worse tires and I'd be in a worse position than if I got up to him or tried to work up to him, get close, and then pit at maybe the same time or even after him. The risk is that the people behind me that I just worked so hard to pass could undercut, so it would be a defensive undercut had I gone for it, but luckily it didn't look like they were going to do that whatsoever, and as you can see by the way that they were driving, it didn't look like I was in any danger whatsoever from them if they were to undercut. So it is the best choice right now just to pit at a normal part of the pit window. As we went into the pits, we were in 5th place, and as we come out, you can see that we are in 7th and soon to be 8th place. And that's just because people who are behind us decided not to pit yet. And that always, not always, but it usually ends up sorting itself out. Now, this guy thought he was in an action movie, completely jumped his car back on the track, and was safe. That was actually really impressive. And it was in a really cool looking car too. So I liked that. I thought you guys would enjoy that too. Now, despite the fact that we did go into the pits at a very normal time for the pit window, we did end up using a bit of an undercut on the guy directly in front of us. He chose to go in 1 lap after us, and that took the difference between us, the distance between us from 2.5 to 1.3. So the undercut did work. It is an undercut still, but it wasn't a crazy undercut necessitated by going in earlier than we should have. We were able to take the normal pit strategy and still pull off a bit of an undercut on this driver, 2Flower. Now, I do not actually know this 2Flower driver, but Hogston did mention him, and he was also very kind as we were driving, as you'll see. Actually, I'm going to jump forward to it right now. After being very kind and providing the slipstream, which gave me a 12.6. By the way, I think this car can probably do a 12.1, if not even better, with a lot of really good slipstream and a good driver. After defending just a single corner, noticing that I was still on their tail, they just went ahead and let me go. Now, like I said, I don't think I know 2Flower. If you're listening, thank you very much. This was very kind. It's also probably the best thing to do if we're looking at the long-term race ahead. I think after defending that once and seeing that we were probably going to be in a prolonged battle, I'm guessing that he just wanted to work together with me, hoping that we could both just lap really fast, really cleanly, and potentially catch the people ahead. It's either that or they're just being really nice and deciding to give me a position. I assume it's the first, but either way, I appreciate it, 2Flower. Now, since the vast majority of the work that I had to do was already behind me at the very beginning of my second and final stint, I was just 1 position away from podium, and unfortunately, Mr. Kentish Gent right there found a bit of snap oversteer, and that is actually just way too easy to do. If you're feeling bad about spinning that car out, just don't feel bad. I've watched some of the world's best drivers spin that car out on various tracks. That car is just incredibly difficult to drive. So Kentish Gent, I'm sorry that we had to see that, but you are not alone in that. We all have spun that car out. Now, I really wish I could say that I was able to close in 3 seconds in 4 laps, but in reality, I was not able to do that. It took everything I had just to keep 2Flower away from me, far enough that I felt good enough about just staying in the position that he gave me. And so we're going to jump to the end. Well, I was able to cut a full second out of the gap between myself and Luca 10 karting, and I was also able to put a second between myself and 2Flower. About 2 or 3 laps after the last jump is when my tires pretty much died, and then I was on equal pace with the BRZs in front and behind. I think if I was closer initially to Luca and Iceman, then I would have been able to do something with this car, and if I was able to get in front, it would be very, very difficult for one of the BRZs to get in front. So if you do qualify in this race and you do use the M6, I think you stand a really good chance of beating the BRZ. Thank you for watching my guide. If you liked it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm going to leave you with a look at my current members. I love every one of you. Thank you very much.